Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, sometimes it's the music supervisor that provides the soundtrack to our memories when it comes to film and TV. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean that you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, this audio-only experience, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals who pick their brain about current projects, daily industry, how they got started, and so very much more, enlightening in a conversational fashion. And, you know, if you like how we do things around here, I will assume that you do, because let's face it, you're listening right now. And if you are, please keep listening and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, gives you a 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere. Places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we'd absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, Letterboxd, the TikTok, the Blue Sky, the Threads, and probably several other places that I'm losing track of. And In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over to In the Seats, intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest in the world of film, television, basically the movie game at large. Because guess what? If we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it all that much more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us that ultimate kindness. Come on by and pay us a visit. Oh, this was a fun one. We got to dive into the world of Young Sherlock as we talked with the music supervisor, the one only Ian Neil, and we talked about the art of the job and all that sort of fun stuff, and coming to it after, well, many decades of experience, and his work with Guy Ritchie, and, well, I nerded out on a couple of the songs that he chose, and just how the use of music is such a vital factor in when it comes to making these films and these shows that we all love so much. Ian was a real treat to talk to, and if I think really gave some insight on sort of the art of music supervision and what it means to do that job in application to a big show like this. But we had a great time talking with him. But as always, dial up your Prime Video if you have it. If you don't, sign up now. Check out Young Sherlock. It's a hell of a lot of fun. But first, enjoy our conversation with the one and only Ian Neil, because between you and me, it's a pretty darn good one as we get some insight into this Emmy Awards push season, and hope he gets nominated because it's good work. You know what I mean? I like talking to people who are behind the scenes and do all this vital stuff that make the shows and the movies that we love. But like I said, Young Sherlock's on Prime Video. Our talk with Ian is right now, and enjoy them both because well, they're both pretty good. And we'll see you soon. But I mean, first off, obviously, man, just thank you so much for the time, and I mean, congrats on your work on Young Sherlock.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. No, it's been good. It's been really good fun. It has genuinely been good fun.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I'm curious on something like this because I mean, I know you've worked with Guy before, but I mean, I'm curious when in the process do you get brought on? Because in watching a few of these episodes, it really felt like a lot of the choices that you have to make and a lot of the choices that the composer made are very much in lockstep, and I can't remember the last time I saw something that felt so seamless.
That's good. Do you know what? I love that. I'm really glad you pointed it out. It's completely happenstance, but no. I mean, I've worked with Chris. I mean, Chris has worked with Guy as well over a bunch of years as well now, probably more than most other composers have worked with Guy. And I think once we knew what he was going to deliver. We were temping up with stuff from other shows, and I think he was definitely aware of what we were using because he interweaved a few things in there and overlaid them. But I don't think he was he wasn't influenced by our sound, and I wasn't influenced by his sound. But we did need to find that equilibrium of it's a period piece. It's 1880 or whatever. We're using songs that were released 100 years later, which for me is sometimes quite difficult to accept. I'm a chronological man. So when I'm hearing a punk track, and it's I mean it's never done. It's never done in reverse. You're never watching a show where it's forward in time, and you know what I mean. It's not like, but it is a Back to the Future type of thing. And so I struggled with that. I mean, I remember sort of watching a film. I'm sure you know it, called Plunkett and McLean.
Oh my God, yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it was Robert Carlyle, and I can't remember. And I remember seeing that at the cinema, some must be 20, 25 years ago. And they used contemporary music in this sort of period piece. And I was like, man, this is fucked up. You can't do this. It's not. And then I think there was a couple of other things that came along that did it. And then obviously Peaky Blinders in particular, from a TV perspective, did it. And I accepted it. But I think what I was saying on the previous call is that I think the key is to sort of try and not take people out of the world that they're in and put them in a place where they're remembering that song because it was their first kiss or their first drive down the motorway. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, and I think that's the difficult thing. You don't want to take people out of that space because then suddenly you're not in 1880, you're in 1981. And then what and I don't personally, I don't like that. I don't want to be drawn out. I want to hear the music, I want to love the music, but I don't want it to make me feel like I should be somewhere else and my mind goes elsewhere to that first kiss or whatever it was, that football match, or you know what I mean. And that's tricky because you can't do it across the board. Obviously everyone's going to have their own thoughts and memories, but you try and find things that I guess timeless. And I know it's a silly thing to say, and I know there are things in there that are not timeless, but in the process while you're doing it and discussing it with execs and editors, you go, oh yeah, no, and also try to find things that are more importantly that are not being used somewhere else in a Tarantino movie, or you know what I
Exactly. Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
that's worse. It's like, oh yeah, that reminds me of it. Oh shit, okay, and then we
Right,
really,
right.
you know. Um, but again, that's difficult nowadays because so many great songs have been synced so many times, and you can't track everything. You can do your best to look on IMDb, and if you ask a publisher has it been used before, they'll go, oh yeah, no, And half the time they don't want to tell you because they don't want to put you off from using the song.
Yeah,
So
yeah. No,
it's just
100%.
yeah. But I mean, I'm working on The Gentleman 2 at the moment, season two, and there is a classical opera piece in there, and it's famously used. It's a Bach piece, and it's famously used in Casino, and I think Guy knows that, and by the same token, it's a homage in some respects. But it's also, does that for other people go, oh, that's a bit lazy? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's so many great, and so yeah, we've been busy sort of finding some opera replacements for that are in exactly the same world, but don't remind you of a classic film. And you've got all the films behind you, so you'll be able to identify it immediately. And go, "Well, why did they use that?" And I know Tarantino's done it a lot, and I know that he'll say it's a tribute and blah blah blah. That's fine. It's just I think it can backfire as well. So you're trying to find some originality, some tone, some colors, and everything that you need to do to sort of paint that scene really.
No, 100%. And I mean, it really does feel like so much of your job is really comes down to listening. Because I mean, I even think of something like even in the first episode, the fiddle player in the pub. And then later on, we get more strings,
Yeah,
but there's a little bit of reverb to it, and it feels a bit more edgy, a bit more fresh. And there
yeah.
is such a unique kind of through line of the use of music in this film. And I mean, from your perspective, show,
Mm.
I'm sorry, but from your perspective, what is it about sort of, I guess, the art of listening that really adds sort of extra layers to sort of getting the story out there to audiences?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's process is probably different. I mean, I mean, as much as I know that Spotify has its detractors, it gives you the entire world's catalog in front of you, and
Yeah.
in my other house, I've got a similar setup to you. I've still kept 5,000 CDs. I don't know why. They're just taking up a lot of space. But I've also now got, endless playlists and stuff. So that's what's really nice. You can just go down a deep dark hole, and I don't think everyone can do that. And I was talking to the other chap, but a lot of people now don't know where to find music. There are people of a certain age that, oh yeah, I grew up listening to this in the '70s, and then I stopped listening to bands after Nirvana or whatever. And it's like, you're still listening to the same music you've listened to for the last 30 years. But what about Fontaine's DC? What about, you know what I mean? And it's like, but it's not as available. It's available to them, but not in a way that it was presented to them before. Because they get on the car, it'd be on the radio, it'd be on top of the pops, or it'd be on. Now it's like they go onto Spotify and they look at this. New Friday, and they go, "Fuck, I don't know any of this." But in that mix, there's always going to be 3 or 4 great songs that you will like in that genre, or that remind you know what I mean. But it's like it's
Yeah.
really hard to navigate. Where for us, it's like this is great. This is like I mean, it can be overwhelming, but by the same token, you can just you can keep going, and then when you're done, it's it's like how many songs do you send? Is it 10 for this scene? Is it 20? Is it 5? Sometimes, like with the opera thing I was just mentioning earlier on, I found one track the other day and I sent it straight through to the edit and went, I think this is great. It's not been, it's not a composer that gets used frequently. And they went, oh, this is great. And they put it straight in. No, I could have spent another hour, and I would happily spend another hour listening to sort of Italian opera. But at that time, I thought, well, that's it. Let's see what happens. And then there are other times where I go, oh, do you know what? I need to keep going. And also, don't forget that you're putting, if it's not always going to be for that scene. Somebody might like a track, and then they go, oh yeah, but we'll use this somewhere else. So it's never a waste. But I think in terms of the art of listening, I mean, I can, I've been able to scroll through music in 15 seconds and know when I'm going to like the track. And I've been able to do that for most of my career. And I'll scrub through and I'll know whether it's got that hook and that chorus. It's going to be too long of a build up. It's got some lyrics. You're not always trying to get lyrics on the nose. You want to be a little bit vague sometimes. And yeah, it's just an instinctive thing. I don't think there's something, you can teach a supervisor how to license music, how to negotiate, how to work out rights hold. I never knew any of that when I started. I had no idea what publishing was. I mean, I grew up and I was working in a record shop, and all I knew was record labels. I didn't know there was a publisher or how they got their money, or even know what they did. But I think the kind of creative aspect is instinctive, and you have to be quite not confident. I think you just have to sort of go with your gut instincts, and if they're wrong, they're wrong, and but no one's going to fire you for that. They're not going to go, well, they'll just can have some more ideas, or, oh, I wasn't thinking along those lines. And then, I don't know, my mind, yeah, I go down this sort of, I go down a word, not even a word search. I go down the sort of thought process of like one thing, like what's happening in that scene? What is it that is not the obvious thing? You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, they're riding through a forest. There's a horse chasing them. Okay, well, but more importantly, where they're getting to, and then I'll come up with something, and then you just go down a rabbit hole, and then you find an artist you like, and then you find a sound that's the right beat, and then you go, oh, I remember blah blah blah. And also, with all due respect, Spotify will also help you.
Yeah.
And you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. You can look at the recommendations, but you've got to hear them, and you still got to listen to them. You still got to know where they're going to work. And I think that's but that's the fun of it. That's the fun part.
Well, and that begs an interesting question that I'd like to ask, because it's one of those things where I can imagine in your job, it's the balance between sort of finding the right track, but also finding the right track with someone who you've never heard of. Because I have to reference something that you worked on, like Lock, Stock. I'm a big Lewis
Yeah.
Taylor fan, and I remember hearing that track and I absolutely
Wow.
loved it.
Good for you.
And it's one of those things where it's like that got me down another rabbit hole. Like for you,
Yeah.
like how do you balance sort of the art of the discovery versus sort of the established right track?
It's I love that you love that Lewis Taylor. The funny thing about that was I was actually working at Universal at the time, or what was Polygram that became Universal. And I was in-house. That was my first sort of in-house job as head of film and TV, with a staff of 2, and me being one of them. And I got introduced to Guy through a music supervisor who was really there just to sort of do the admin. And we got chatting, and we went up to Liverpool to meet the composer and start. And I did put a cassette playlist together on the way up. The Lewis Taylor he was signed to Island Records, who was part of the Polygram group at the time. And I remember going in to see this guy called Dave Gilmore, who signed him, and listening to this voice. And I was like, oh man, and then he was a white guy. And I'm like, what the fuck? Because he sounded so soulful
Exactly.
and then we picked up the album and we said, okay, well, look, we want to do, we needed something, and it was very late in the day, and I pitched 18 with a Bullet by, the original Pete Wingfield, and we thought, let's do a cover of that to give us a marketing opportunity. We didn't really have we didn't have a single on the back of that film. Didn't stop us from ultimately selling about 1 million copies. But yeah, no, it was just one of those fortuitous things. Yeah, sorry, I missed the other bit of your question. Oh,
No,
the new
just
and the
like the
old.
balance of like,
Yeah,
finding someone who people don't really know, like a Lewis Taylor, to go on your
yeah.
film versus sort of finding an established artist.
It all comes down to the various voices in the room, and you've got your editors, particularly on TV, where you've got multiple editors working across different
Yeah,
episodes, and you need to keep that flow going throughout each one. And then you've got your music editor doing his thing, you've got the exec producers, you've got the showrunner, you've got the director, our directors. So there's a lot of people to sort of please. I don't unless I'm instructed, oh, this needs to be a new track or this needs to be an old track. And that's sometimes driven by budget, because obviously the heritage tracks are always going to be way more expensive than the new stuff. I tend not to think about that unless specifically I feel like this should be contemporary, or somebody said, we don't want it to be, we want it to be a contemporary track. Um, but I never go out of my way to sort of go one way or the other. I just go for what is, what's right. Budget will probably dictate that, to be honest. That is, it's definitely part of it. It's so much easier to get deals out of upcoming artists who need the opportunity as opposed to Johnny Cash, who's,
right, right. But
whose
I mean,
estate needs
also,
the
like, how
money,
has the minutia of licensing songs kind of changed? Because obviously, even as little as maybe 10, 15 years ago, you would have to go directly to the artist. Now there's been so many deals where artists have licensed their catalogs back to the
Yeah,
labels
yeah, to
for
the
like
yeah,
big numbers and all that kind of stuff. Like, how has sort of
yeah.
the paperwork of it all changed?
Oh man. It's got very long and drawn out. And with no disrespect to my employer on this project, Amazon or Netflix, they're all studios, so
Yeah,
they're all, in the UK, we were not a studio-based business. We were, the BBC, the ITV could use what they wanted under, blanket agreements, and independent feature films. It is quite drawn out because there's a lot of language.
right.
There is a language gap. We're not suffering it today on this call, but there is a language gap between the US and the UK in terms of legal stuff, and it's like, so this is a UK production, but I'm delivering to Amazon in the US. There's a lot of boxes need to be ticked. I was saying to previous guy that interestingly, you're right. 10, 15 years ago, I would probably look at a spreadsheet now of projects that I'd worked on. And I guarantee you, Dave, it would be Sony, EMI, or, as it is one of the same now, Warner
Right.
Chappell,
Yeah.
Universal, even if they only had a percentage of it. And the ones that I didn't know that were copyright control or independent were far and few between. And and I think that's just because of, but now over the last 10 years, because of the way the music industry shifted, because artists are not able to necessarily sign to a major or don't want to, more importantly, they want to have control of their own catalog. They do admin deals. And so, you go on there and go, oh, this is with Centric. Okay. Oh, cool. Okay. I know, or it's with a independent music supervisor that just looks after independent artists. And quite often that can actually be, as long as you can get to the core, quickly, then it can be really easy. It's like what you don't want is that, oh, I don't know if I control that. Oh, we might have a sample in it. Oh, he split that with a writer, but the writer's gone now and we don't know how to get, if
Right.
it's straightforward, and that doesn't happen very often, but if it's like, look, these are the writers, this is the split, it can go really quickly. And then the good thing is, if if they're completely self-released and they don't have their own company that is putting out issuing licenses, we can issue our template. They take a look at that. It's no different to what's on everybody else's majors template, and they get it signed, and it can be done in, paperwork can be turned around in a couple of days. Then you're still sitting around waiting for various publishers, unnamed publishers and record labels that have got such a backlog that we're waiting a month for them to issue, and we're trying to wrap the show up. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, again, I don't look for that because it makes my life easier, but I also don't shy away from it now because I go, yeah, it takes a little bit of investigation. If it's not on the PRS or ASCAP or BMI, and it's not registered, and your record label's not, you will have to go. But Instagram's really good for finding people.
For sure.
Honestly, I mean, I use it more as a work tool than I do as a, yeah. I mean, I find
I don't
people and
doubt
I
it. I don't
message
doubt
them.
it.
Yeah. And then they come back and they go, oh, thanks for finding me. And sometimes I've even had people that go, ah, shit, we didn't know we weren't registered. And, yeah. And then they found money sitting in in an account that, because I hadn't moved it over. So, yeah. And that's part, I like the detective work. I generally, it is fun. Oh, found you. You know what I mean? And they're really glad that you found them as well.
Over 100%. I don't doubt that. Yeah. Now, I mean, I gotta
Yeah.
ask, how does having a second hand with someone like Guy on a project like this help your job?
How do I do? You know what? Guy is crazily busy right now. He's never been more prolific. He is literally, I don't think he's stopped now for about 3 years in terms of movie.
Right.
He's now got three TV shows on the go. All of them, I'm currently working on The Gentleman 2 season two. He's just filmed Mobland. I think we probably, hopefully, fingers crossed, come back with Young Sherlock. He's moving fast, and he's on the shoot. He's been coming into the mix on Sherlock, on Gentleman 2. It just depends on his sort of avails. If he doesn't like something, he'll let me know, or the editor
For
will let
sure.
me know. But when you're doing that many shows now, you have to have a slightly hands-off, approach. It's like you can't, because he's only directing two or three of the episodes. His editor can't be editing. His key editors can't be editing them all. So you have to be a bit hands-off and allow the Amazons or the Netflix, and they've got their opinion, and the exec producers and and the showrunner to have their take in it as well. But yeah, I mean, he's generally, I know when he doesn't like something, and I'll hear it either from, him go, what's this shit? What's this doing here? Find something else. Find something else. But yeah, I mean, he's used a lot of music over 20 plus years now. And I think, yeah, I mean, he just has an instinctive not flavor. If it works, it works. But if it's something that I think works, and maybe even his editor, who obviously has a close understanding of him as well, I'll send something to his editor, and they go, "Yeah, this is great," and then I come back with, "Guy doesn't like it. Why?" Doesn't like it, and it's like you're not going to
Right.
go, oh, okay, you haven't got time to go, right, what is it that you don't like? Is it I just don't like it. Give me another fucking song, man, So it's a fluid process, but yeah, I mean, he's a busy man, and keeping a lot of people gainfully employed in the business at the moment, which is nice, and he's turning out, I think he's turning out some really great work. I mean, I wouldn't
I
be
agree. Yeah.
chatting to you now. I mean, Young Sherlock's been a massive hit, worldwide. And Gentleman 2 was a massive hit for Netflix, and the new season's going to do exactly the same. So, but
Love it.
yeah, it's an understanding that goes back way back when.
Well, I love that. I love that because I mean, it takes a village to do this, and you have to have trust in your team. But I mean, just to
Yeah,
put
yeah,
just to put a bow on all this. I mean, I got to ask you because at least from my
yeah.
perspective, music and the moving image are like peanut butter and chocolate. Like they're fucking perfect together. I love them. What was
Yeah.
the moment for you, sort of as a younger man, that you saw something either in a theater or on TV and went, "Shit, that's perfect. Those two go so well together."
You know what? It's a great question, and I get it asked a few times. It shows up my age, but that's fine. I think there was a couple of epiphany moments for me. I mean, everyone, people can. I don't remember when I saw That'll Be the Day with David Essex or Stardust. I saw it. I think definitely two films that really struck a chord with me and made me think about music and film. One was Quadrophenia.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Um, Not because I was a massive Who fan, but that whole sort of as a school kid, suddenly turning up and making my tie really tight and putting my top, as I used to go in there looking like a slob, shirt undone. It was like no, and, so the whole mod thing, the whole 60s culture, it also probably opened my eyes up to a lot of 60s music that I might have been aware of, but hadn't, like Green Onions was not probably on my radar in the way it would have been until thing is doing that across
Oh
the
my
dance
God,
floor.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that was a film that really did open my eyes. And then I think the other one was probably another British film, was with Nal and I.
Oh my God,
Um,
yeah. Perfect.
and they're driving down the what was the new Westway Road that had only just been built, and there's about six cars on there. Now there's like 70,000 a mile an hour, and then Jimi Hendrix comes on, and you go, fuck, you know. And I know now, I found out latterly, how the deal got, because back then, I mean, we're talking 40 odd years ago. They didn't, there wasn't a sync department, there wasn't a supervisor, there were people literally in an edit working together. It was a bit a director and an editor, and then somebody had to reach out to somebody in business affairs in the record label and somebody in a publishing company that was probably working in copyright and go, we want to use this piece of music. This is a low budget feature. It's got blah blah blah, and strike a deal. Now it gets done thousands of times a day. Then there would have been a lot of head scratching. There would have been, oh, what do we do? Did they, approach Jimi Hendrix's estate? Of course they did. How did they sell it into him? It's not so easy now. Hendrix is very particular about, his usages, and that film is obviously a very heavily related to some drug use. You wouldn't
No, for
get
sure,
that
for
would
sure.
not get in that film now, Dave. I can tell you that right
Oh
now.
no, you're
I
absolutely
know
right.
that
You're absolutely right.
it
I
would
believe that.
not get in there. So yeah, so I think there was that. There was a few other. I was really into a lot of the indie British films in the 80s, like the whole, like Nick Powell um, and Mona Lisa and all those films. And I think the other one that struck me also, which I've watched a few, was American Werewolf in London.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And what they did is they used a load of songs that had Moon in the title, and I'm like, oh, God, yeah. I mean, it seems so obvious, but no one's really done that since. You know what I mean? They stuck to the sort of principal core. It's about a werewolf when the moon comes up, and yeah, here they were. And you have Van Morrison on there. You had Creedence Clearwater Revival, and I think those are the ones that probably at that time when I was leaving school and whatever and wasn't sure what I wanted to, because all I did was listen to music. I bought music, that's all I did. I just, and all my friends, we'd go to gigs and bought music and play sport. There was nothing else to do, you know. So yeah, it's funny how to sort of, go full circle and then turn that into a career. But still love the music and still, appreciate it and be able to do something with it, and kind of pay back, and I mean, I'm sure they're not aware of it. Some of them are, but to pay back what they gave me at the time, which was a love of music, memories. And then down the line, you go, oh, I've just given, Robert Smith just had a track on blah, blah, blah. I'm sure he doesn't give a shit, but I think he does in some respects as well. I like to think they do, but yeah, it's a nice feeling. It's a nice feeling, and some artists are genuinely grateful of the income stream. It's no, they're not all making bags of money anymore now from streaming or touring or whatever. And some of them, they get a nice little pay packet. They get a repeat use on something, and yeah, and then somebody discovers it. Children or somebody of another generation discovers a song and then suddenly becomes a fan of an artist, which is is all you can really hope for. Really, it wasn't what we planned to. Don't think that was the plan to what everyone planned when it first we started using music. But it's obviously now the world that we live in is such a accessible point that people can then they can press Shazam, they can look at the credits, and then and then they're on a musical journey, which is lovely.
No, and I mean, you're so right. And I mean, I'm so glad you brought up Quadrophenia too, because I mean, just even in thinking about it now, sort of that whole mod idea gave us the Jam, it gave us Paul Weller, spun off into
Yep.
Jules Holland and Amy Winehouse and all that fun, fantastic stuff that we
Yeah.
wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily have with that movie. And it was such a pop culture moment that it never really quite gets the recognition it deserves.
It does from my end. Yeah. No, I mean, I do. I honestly, I played it actually at a theatre last year, and I was doing a talk, and that was the film that I wanted to show. And yeah, I mean, I can't. It wasn't a political film, and because it was made in the late '70s, and the film was obviously set in the '60s. But it brought a movement. It brought a movement of fashion. It brought a movement of culture. It brought a movement of music. And yeah, and we had a whole bunch of bands. I mean, the mod revival came 15 years after it previously, its original incarnation. I
Yeah.
can't think of many others. I mean, punk. Yeah, a lot of them have never gone away, but they never came back in such a sort of force and a whole new generation. And that, yeah, I mean, I think that's why it is. It's also it's a real coming of age story. The characters are great, and at the heart of it, you've got an album that wasn't very successful. I mean, it was a Who album, but they couldn't even tour with it because they didn't know how to tour with it. They couldn't take it live, and I'm not even sure people wanted it, so they didn't tour with it. But Pete was so proud of that work that it took several years later to then turn it into a film that then gave it its popularity. Without which it would probably be in the depths of one of the least popular Who albums. But as it turns out, it's now one of the most popular. Which so yeah, no, I can watch it every day. I mean, I don't, but it's one of those. It comes on the telly on the BBC or whatever, and it's like midnight, and you go, "Fuck, okay." And then and then of course the worst thing is I'm reciting every freaking line. It's like I mean I know every single line, but yeah, it's funny. It's yeah,
Well, I mean,
yeah.
Ian, man, thank you so much for the time and the insight and the work on
Did you
Young
enjoy the
Sherlock. And
show?
at the very least, I'm putting in Quadrophenia later
Yeah,
tonight. So
yeah. Did you enjoy Young Sherlock though? You thought it was a
I
bit
did very
different
much
from
so,
the.
man. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun, isn't it? Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's got
Good,
such a good
good.
line between sort of the classic stuff and sort of a newer, edgier vibe. It's really a great show.
I will pass on your comments to Chris as well on the composition stuff because he's a very humble man and he'll be very
I
delighted
appreciate
to
that,
know
man.
that
Thank you
you've
so
thought of
much.
that. No, I will for
All
sure.
right, this
I'll
has
see
been
him.
fun, Ian. Thanks again for the time.
Yeah, and you. Thanks. Take care.
All right,
Cheers,
bye.
buddy. Bye, bye, bye.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.